Hello and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Today I'm going to be sharing with you part 11 of our beginning quilting class. We're going to be working on a Hawaiian applique block. I'm going to be teaching you the needle-turn applique technique. We've learned the fusible applique technique, which is a simple, fast way to applique. This one does take a little bit more time, but I think it's something that everyone should know. Before I take you to my tabletop here and show you the supplies that we need for this block, I just want to give a shout out to a young boy named Aiden. He's an 8-year-old boy who I've learned has been checking out my channel. Thank you so much for doing that. Hope you've enjoyed your Christmas and you're enjoying being back in school. You may hear the wind howling here at the window. We have had a blizzard here in Rockford, and so I don't even know if there was school yesterday for Aiden, but it's a beautiful snowy day out there, and fortunately now I think the snow has stopped. So we finally, I think, shoveled our driveway for the last time today, I think. From Thursday evening all day through yesterday, every time I took Bailey out to use the bathroom outside, I had to shovel off the deck one more time, so she had a path to get out there, and I got a little tired of shoveling, but I think we might be done with the snow falling for today. So let's take a peek at everything I have here on my tabletop. First of all, there are going to be a couple of PDFs for you that are linked in the description box below. The first one is the instructions that I'll be covering for you in the video today. And the second one is a PDF of the template, the Hawaiian applique template. And we are going to have to tape this together. So you're going to match up the lines, and you can see the lines here. You want to match up those lines on each one and then tape it together. And then you're going to want to loosely cut it out. And then once you've loosely cut it out, including the seam allowances, we want to make sure we're including that dotted line because we need the 1/4 inch seam allowance for needle turn. So then we're going to pin it to the fabric that we're going to use for our Hawaiian applique. And then we'll cut it out of the fabric. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do, I took a paper scissors, and I'm just going to cut off one side here. I'm following that line, that straight line. That's my guide. And I'm going to place it so that it matches exactly on that line on the opposite side. So there we go. I've got my template ready, and I'm going to take my tape. I'll start in the middle with just a little bit of tape. And I'm going to tape it together. So now all of that matches beautifully, and I have a complete Hawaiian applique that I can loosely cut out. And I'm using a paper scissors again, and I'm just going to loosely cut around this right now because I'm going to place this on my pink fabric. I'm going to show you the rest of the supplies you need here in just a second. So I'm just loosely cutting around this. Okay, this can go in the trash or you can recycle that, whichever you prefer. All right, so the other supplies we need are a 9.5 inch background square, and I need to get this pressed, and then I want to press it vertically and horizontally. So I have guidelines on it. I want it pressed this way and I want it pressed this way so that those creases will help me to place my applique piece on here so that it's centered properly. This is the fabric from which I want to cut my applique piece. So I will pin that down. Applique pins are great to have. I do have a container of applique pins, but I'm not able to track them down right now. As soon as I finish getting this video created and uploaded to YouTube, I will probably find the applique pins. They're basically shorter pins, and then they stay out of your way as you're pinning using the needle as you're going around and appliquing. But I'm just going to use these to pin the piece down. You're also going to need some needles. I have a variety here. These are a bunch of quilting betweens. And size 10 is the recommended size. I have some 9s. This one is a variety pack, but find one that works best for you. A 9 or a 10, I think, probably will allow you to make a nice small stitch. So if you have those, that will be very helpful. And then for your thread, I do prefer to use a 100 weight silk thread if you have that. The finer the thread, the better for applique, for needle-turn applique. So these are all made, these are either YLI, and I think this one is Applique, excuse me. And they're all 100 weight, which is a very fine thread. Typical thread for sewing is usually a 40 or a 50, usually about a 50, and that is a much thicker thread, and it's more visible when you applique with it. So try and find something that's thinner if you can. That works much better. I do have some Thread Magic. It's just something that you can run your thread over, so that gets rid of any electrical static that it might have, and it just goes through your thread or your fabric much easier. I have a little guide here to help you load your needle or thread your needle if you need something like that. You're also going to need either a marking pen or a chalk. Here's another one. Different types are available. Just choose whatever works best for you or what you might have. And that's what we're going to mark our line on here. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And then, of course, a tiny scissors. So the first thing we're going to do, let me move this out of the way, is to pin this template onto our fabric and then get it cut out. So I'm simply going to pin all of these on here. I am probably going to use a small scissors or something not quite so big and cut this all out. When I cut it, I am going to cut on the dotted lines. I must maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's very important. So cut on the dotted lines, get everything pinned down, and cut this out. I have the applique piece cut out, and I cut it on the dotted lines. Let's remove our template. Here we go. When you print out your template, don't forget to print it at 100% so that it does remain the same size. All right, so here we have our little heart applique that we're going to applique down. One of the things that you can do, and I see this, it's recommended, I no longer do this because I can eyeball it, but they do recommend that you put your 1/4 inch seam allowance on the fabric itself, and that will show you the line that you need to turn, and that will maintain an even turn all the way around. I just eyeball it because I guess I've done it enough that I can identify what the 1/4 inch seam allowance is. And so you can just go around the whole perimeter of the fabric and put in your 1/4 inch seam allowance so that you can see that, so when you're turning it is visible. I am using a disappearing ink right here. This side here is a Mark Be Gone. You can use water to get rid of this one. I have also a chalk. You could use chalk to get that drawn in there. I don't think I'm going to be, I guess I can see the yellow. I want to make sure this is in the screen for you. So I could use a chalk and just identify that and then brush it away when I'm done. And I also have a white chalk. There's a variety of different options for you. But this line is going to disappear for me using this purple disappearing ink, and that way I don't have to worry about getting rid of it later. But I'm going to thread my needle now with my thread, and try to match your fabric if you can. I am probably going to use something like this, which will more or less match the background. You might want to match the applique. I don't have a pink silk. I have these colors. So I think I might just use this color right here, and that's what I'm going to use to applique. So let me get my needle threaded, and I'll be right back. I have creased my background square here, and I've also creased the applique unit itself. I folded it, and I've got a crease here and a crease here, and I've matched those creases so that it's centered on the background square. And now we're going to start appliquing. I would recommend, if you have never done needle-turn applique before, you might just want to do a heart. Just find a little scrap of fabric and a scrap that you can cut out your heart on, and just, finish the heart, and then bring that over to another scrap of fabric and needle turn that. Once you have practiced on just a simple heart, that will give you a better feel for doing this. So that's something to think about. I have some thread magic here. Because it is so dry right now in our winter weather, I am just simply taking this thread and running it through. I'm just holding my finger on it as I run the thread through, and it just gives it a little bit more body without the static electricity. So that is what I'm doing there. Now I'm going to start somewhere where there's a rather straight line, and so I'll probably start out in here because that is a rather straight area there. I'm going to come up from the back. I'm first of all just going to turn this under. That's the needle turn. Actually, I need to be doing that with my needle. But you just turn it under on that line, come up from the back right next to it, and bring your first stitch. I just put up a basic knot in the back of when I threaded my needle. Now I'm going to take a little thread in the background. Let me see if I can get close enough here. A little tiny stitch in the background. And then I'm going to come up to the fabric and take a teeny tiny stitch. Then I'm going to go next to it in the background, take a little stitch, come up into the fabric, the applique fabric, and take a little stitch. And it really does help if you use a smaller needle. That helps to keep it, keep your stitches very small. And when you're using, I've caught this pin here, let me move that. When you're using silk thread or 100 weight thread, you can barely see the stitches themselves, which I think is wonderful. It just disappears there. This thread that I chose is really quite perfect. It's blending in with both sides, both fabrics. So let's see, this one is Applique REF SF3. That is what I'm using there. Now, we have gotten down here to the edge. So I have stitched from here down to there. This is where my thread is coming up right there. And I've got the fold there, as you can see. Now what I need to do, let me grab my needle again. It kind of disappears on me. It's so tiny. Now I'm going to fold this fabric here. That's called needle turn. So I've turned the fabric under with that needle there. So I have a nice point, and it's folded on the line that I had drawn. So let me see if you can see that. I want to make sure that's, so I have folded it under. So it's, I'm stitched here already, and now I'm going to continue there. So in the corner, I'm going to take a little stitch from the background. I'm going to take a little stitch from the fabric. And then I'm turning here. I'm going to take a little stitch from the background, a little stitch from the fabric, and I will keep going. As you can see, I've turned the corner there, and I'm going to continue turning with my needle on this fabric. If you feel that 1/4 inch is just too much fabric for you to deal with, you can certainly reduce that amount of seam allowance to a little bit less than that, between 1/8 and 1/4 inch. I think you really do need more than 1/8 inch though to be able to get everything to lay nicely. So you're going to come around this curve very gently. When you get to these corners here, as you're flipping around, if you feel that there's too much bulk under there, you might want to trim away a little bit of that excess fabric as you're coming around those outside curves. A couple things I want to share with you. I've come around this curve, but what I did was I trimmed away that much of the seam allowance, which made it easier for this fabric to fold under so that I could do the needle turn applique. So it's just a little bit that I removed there. Now and that was an outside curve. Now we're coming to some inside curves, or actually they're points. And let me find something here that I can point. So what I needed to do was cut into this inside point here and almost up to the stitching line, and cut into that almost up to the stitching line, or the line that we're going to turn it under. And then we're going to flip this underneath all the way to the point. Sometimes you got to use your fingers when you're getting into these teeny tiny little areas. There we go. And so I'm going to continue stitching all the way there. Then I'm going to flip this under here with my needle and stitch along that stem up to this point and do the same, and then come back around. So let me continue stitching here, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. So I've just come around here, and then I took this part right here and flipped it under on that line. There we go. I'm feeling it to make sure it's nice and flat. Turning that under, and I'm going to continue stitching right up into that point. And then I'm going to go straight across here, and I'm going to do the same thing there. I've already kind of reduced that a little bit so that I can get around that curve. This will be another area right here where I am going to clip into that seam allowance there, which will allow me to lay that fabric underneath much more easily. So I'll do the same process as I go all the way around this unit. Here is a better photo of that thread. I didn't realize earlier that I didn't even have it focused properly in the screen. So this is the Applique thread that I'm using. I wanted you to see that I have come around this curve. I clipped into that curve. I guess I have my needle in the way you can't really see it. Let me pull the needle out. So I've clipped into the curve so that I could make a nice fold there of the fabric, and I'm making sure the fabric's relatively flat. There are a couple little bumps I can feel under there, but it's pretty flat. And I'm going to continue doing that. I'll trim into these two. Let me highlight that so you can actually see it better. So that's where the fold line will be. I will cut into this, I will cut into that so that I can fold that fabric under. And I'll continue working all the way around the unit. For the last hour, I've been working on the Needle-turn Applique for my Hawaiian applique block here. And I did go and I wet the block because I did use some of the water Mark Began ink on here, so I wanted to make sure that was removed. So I wet it, and then I took it to the iron and I pressed it. You really can't even see the stitching. Again, I used a 100 weight. It's a silk, and this one is Applique. Applique. I have a hard time saying that. This one is YLI silk. It's 100 weight, but these are very fine threads, and these are both silk. And I think silk thread is really the best thread to use when you're doing any kind of applique where you're hand stitching it down. These were some of the little round top sections of the hearts that I trimmed away because they were just a little bit too much fabric there. So it turned out well. I am happy with it. I've got it nicely pressed. So that takes care of this one. I hope that you'll all try this and maybe even make an entire quilt with it. Every block could have a different color fabric. It could be a very scrappy quilt that you'd make using this Hawaiian applique. These are just some fun little hearts. Just a great little scrappy quilt that you could make using it. And then if you didn't want to do the needle turn, you would simply ignore the outside 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you would use a fusible web, and you could go ahead and applique your blocks using a fuse. That would be a very fast way to applique each and every one of the blocks, and you could watch the previous videos that I have done on fusible applique. Next time on this class, we're going to be learning the stained glass. I was thinking that was going to be this week's class, but actually it's the last one. So we'll be working on that stained glass the next time. That's another fun technique. So I hope you'll join me. If this is the first time you've seen my beginning quilting series, please go back to the introduction, watch that first, and then watch each class from part 1 all the way up to today's class, part 11. And have fun creating a wonderful sampler quilt. Maybe you'd like to grab a couple of those different blocks and make up a scrappy quilt using these patterns. I'm going to add my pattern and my template and put them in sleeves in my notebook, and I'll add this block to the front here. These are all of the other blocks that we have been working on in the order in which we worked on them. So we've done a number of them. They've all been quite fun to create, and many of you have just used scraps from your stash. Maybe some of you have actually pulled some yardage that you had that you wanted to use for this quilt. Any way you make it, it's going to be fun. So I look forward to having you join me next time when we work on the stained glass quilt. And if you do like the content that I provide on my channel, please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. I love to hear from my viewers. And that way it will get out to other viewers just like yourself. So until next time, happy quilting.